Bismillah Rahman Rahim. The today's topic is Poisson's ratio. It is the property of the material, and it is defined as the ratio of the lateral strain to the axial strain, and it is represented by the Greek letter mu. In order to explain what is the Poisson's ratio, consider a cylinder bar, a thin bar, as shown in figure A, and you could see the coordinate frame, the Cartesian coordinate frame x, y, and z, and a load of P is applied along the x direction, as you could see. And let's say the cross-sectional area of the rod is A. Now, according to Hooke's law, sigma x, which is the stress in the x direction, it would be equal to E epsilon x, or epsilon x is equal to sigma x by E. So this is the Hooke's law for this loading condition, where a load P is applied along the x direction. Now in this case, sigma y, stress in y direction, the stress in y direction, and the stress in z direction, sigma g, is 0. What is the reason? The reason is very simple, that you could see only that we are applying the load along x-axis. There is no load along y-axis, no load along z-axis. So therefore, the stress in these directions would be 0. If there is no load, there would be no stress. This is the stress element. This is the stress element drawn for a point taken from inside the material, and we are assuming the stress element as a cubic in cubic shape. So you could see that we have stress sigma x, which is P by A, that is load by cross-section area, resisting area. However, sigma y is 0 because there is no load in the y direction. P is 0, and there is no load in z direction. P is again 0. So P by A here is 0, and it is here 0. Now come to strain. Now if we apply this load P, so it is the pulling load, or a tensile load, due to which what would happen to the material? The material would elongate. The length of the material would increase. However, this increase in length is accompanied by the decrease in the dimension in z direction and the dimension in y direction. In the other two directions, we could easily visualize that the deformation would occur. These dimensions would reduce. The dimension along x-axis would increase, however, the dimension along y-axis and z-axis would decrease. The elongation in the x direction is accompanied by a contraction in the other direction, assuming that the material is isotropic, no directional dependence. Isotropic material, as we discussed before, it is the material in which the properties are same in all directions. The mechanical properties are same in all directions. The properties doesn't depend upon the direction. In x direction, y direction, z direction, the mechanical properties will be the same. Whether you apply or subject the material along x-axis, along y-axis, along z-axis, or along any other axis, the mechanical properties would not alter. It would not change. It would remain the same. The material is isotropic material. So for isotropic material, epsilon y would be equal to epsilon z, and it would be not equal to 0. Although here you could see that sigma y and sigma z is 0, stresses are 0, but there would be deformation along y direction, there would be deformation along z direction. So there would be strain. Strain we define strain as deformation per unit original dimension. So we have original dimension for along z direction. We have original dimension along y direction. So therefore, as deformation occurs along these directions, so we would have strain. And for isotropic material, the strain in y direction and the strain in z direction would be equal. So here, this would happen to the material when you subject the material to tensile loading. This is the applied load which we are, external load which we are applying, and this is the reaction force coming from this support. So meaning that we are subjecting this material to a tensile loading, and because of this tensile loading, the elongation would occur along x-axis, whereas in y direction and z direction contraction would occur, the dimension would reduce. So based on the definition of the Poisson's ratio, that is lateral strain by axial strain, here you could see that this load is along x-axis. So x-axis is our axial direction. So the strain along x-axis would be the axial strain. So axial strain is epsilon x, and lateral strain for y direction, the lateral strain is epsilon y. So epsilon y by epsilon x. And this negative sign shows that epsilon y would be negative. Epsilon y would be negative, or these two would be opposite to each other. Why epsilon y would be negative? Because if there is elongation along x-axis, so we are expecting that there would be shortening along y direction. So the strain epsilon y would be negative. Similarly, if we write the Poisson's ratio for epsilon z, so it would be the strain, lateral strain. In this case, again, epsilon x is the axial strain, and epsilon z is the lateral strain, and a negative sign because epsilon z would be negative. Or in other words, these two would be opposite to each other. If their epsilon x is negative, if we apply a compressive load, then what would happen? These two dimensions, the dimensions along y-axis and z direction, that would increase. So bulging would occur in the material. So the negative sign just means that these two would be always opposite, and these two would be always opposite. In the previous case, we have just saw that when we have applied a axial loading on the material, then this is the analytical model for the Hooke's law. Sigma x is equal to E epsilon x. So in the case where we subject the material to general loading means when we subject the material to the loading in x direction, y direction, and also z direction. In that case, what would be the analytical model for the Hooke's law for the material? And here you see the generalized Hooke's law. In this case, when we subject the material to the generalized load, loading in all three directions. So epsilon x is equal to sigma x by E minus mu sigma y by E minus mu sigma z by E, and similarly we would have epsilon y epsilon z. So these three equations are actually the Hooke's law for the generalized loading when we have loading on the material in all three directions. For a material subjected to multi-axial loading, the normal strain components resulting from the stress components may be determined from the principle of superposition. And this requires strain is linearly related to stress. We could apply these analytical model. You could use these analytical models up to the proportional limit, up to the point where the stress is directly proportional to strain. You could use these analytical models to do the computation and designing. the deformations are small. And this would be true, these equations would be true when the deformations are small and they are below the proportional limit. Otherwise, for example, beyond proportional limit, we cannot use these analytical models to predict the exact values of the stress and strains. So based on these restrictions or assumptions, we have developed these models. And also these models are based on the principle of superposition. Principle of superposition you could apply as long as the system is linear. When the here, as you could see that the system is linear because we are considering the loading up to the proportional limit, and up to the proportional limit stress is directly proportional to strain. What we do in the principle of superposition, here you could see that we have loading in three directions. So in the principle of superposition, you have to consider, assume first the load in along, let's say along x-axis, and you have to find out the strain, and then you have to in strain in x direction, strain in y direction, and strain in z direction. Similarly, then you have to consider only the load along y-axis, and you have to find out the strain in all these three directions. And similarly, then you have to consider the loading along z direction only, and you have to find out the strain in all these three directions. And then you have to superimpose all these calculations on top of each other, and you have to add all these strains. For example, this is the strain due to loading in x direction, this is the strain due to loading in y direction, this is the strain due to loading in the z direction. You have to add all the strains which happen because of all these three loads along x-axis, and you have to add all the strains which happens to all these three loads alone along y-axis, and you have to add all the strains which happens due to these three loads alone, and you have to add and find out epsilon z. Next, we have to discuss that how we got all these three equations for epsilon x, epsilon y, and epsilon z. For that, let's assume that we have the material in the shape of a cube, unit cube. Each side is 1. So this is a unit cube. For loading along x direction, that is px or sigma x, the Poisson's ratio for px, this is the axial direction. When we are doing the calculation for px or sigma x, this would be our axial direction, whereas the other two, that is y and z, would be the lateral direction. So at mu, that is Poisson's ratio, would be equal to minus epsilon y by epsilon x is equal to minus epsilon z by epsilon x. Again, we are assuming isotropic material. The mechanical properties are same in all directions. It is independent of the applied direction. So from this equation, we could write down epsilon y is equal to minus, the sign goes there, so minus mu epsilon x. So we got one equation from this. And the other equation, when we combine this, we use mu is equal to minus epsilon z by epsilon x. Epsilon z is equal to minus mu epsilon x. So this is the strain along y direction because of load px. Because of load px or stress sigma x, the strain in x direction is epsilon x, whereas the strain because of this loading along y direction, that is epsilon y, is equal to mu times epsilon x, and the strain along z direction is minus mu epsilon x. Now for loading Py or stress sigma y, we have to write the Poisson's ratio. Now for Py or sigma y, Py or sigma y, now this is the axial direction. Why the other two would be the lateral direction. So nu, again writing the nu, is equal to minus. Now axial strain is epsilon y, and epsilon x would be lateral strain, is equal to minus axial strain by lateral strain. And from there, epsilon x is equal to minus mu epsilon y, and epsilon z using this equation is equal to minus mu epsilon y. So this is the axial, this is the strain along x-axis due to load Py or stress sigma y, and this is the strain along z direction due to loading Py. Similarly, for load Pz or stress sigma z, that is along this direction. Now this would be the axial direction. However, the other two would be the lateral direction. So the Poisson's ratio here would be minus axial strain. Here it is epsilon z. Lateral strain epsilon x is equal to axial strain epsilon z, and lateral strain epsilon y. So from there, epsilon x would be equal to minus mu epsilon z. Epsilon y is equal to minus mu epsilon z. Now we would be using the principle of superposition. We have to add all the strains along x-axis, all the strain along y-axis, and all the strains along z-axis. So here, for example, the total strain along x direction, that is epsilon x total, it is equal to strain epsilon x due to load px plus strain epsilon x due to load py plus strain epsilon x due to load pz. So here we are adding all of the strains that happen because of all these three loads using the principle of superposition. So epsilon x due to load px minus epsilon x due to py, that is mu epsilon y, and epsilon x due to load pz, which is mu epsilon z. Epsilon x in terms of sigma x would be equal to sigma x e. It would be sigma x e. So epsilon x total would be equal to sigma x by e minus mu, and epsilon y we could write down in terms of sigma y as sigma y by e minus mu, and epsilon z we could write down as sigma z by e. So we got our first equation for epsilon x, the generalized Hooke's law for epsilon x. Similarly, the epsilon y total, the total strain along y direction. So epsilon y due to py plus epsilon y due to load px plus epsilon y due to load pz. Epsilon y due to load py minus epsilon y due to load px. We have already found out that this is epsilon y due to load px. So minus mu epsilon x, epsilon y due to pz, epsilon y due to pz is this, so minus mu epsilon x. Next, we have to write down the epsilon in terms of stress. So epsilon y total is equal to epsilon y sigma y by e minus this mu epsilon x is sigma x by e minus this mu, and epsilon z is sigma z by e. So we got our second equation for the total strain along y direction. Similarly, the total strain along z direction, epsilon z pz plus epsilon z px plus epsilon z py, epsilon z pz minus epsilon z due to load px, epsilon z due to load px minus mu epsilon x, and epsilon z due to load py, epsilon z due to load py is minus mu epsilon y. Next, we have to write down these strains in terms of applied stresses. So epsilon z total is equal to sigma z by E minus mu sigma x by E minus mu sigma y by E. So we got our three equations for the strains, the total strain along x-axis, along y-axis, and along z-axis. And these are known as the generalized Hooke's law because the loading is general loading along x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis. So if we have more than one loading, then you have to use these equations. If there is only uniaxial loading, then you could use the simple Hooke's law, that is sigma is equal to E epsilon. The next topic that we would be discussing is the dilatation and bulk modulus. Dilatation is defined as the change in volume per unit volume. When we subject the material to loading, then we know that the material's dimension would change. The volume of the material is changing. So here we define the terminology dilatation, which is denoted by the letter small e, and it is the change in volume per unit volume. This is the original volume. And dilatation is equal to 1 minus 2 mu e sigma x plus sigma y plus sigma z. In case of general loading, when there is general loading, when we have loading in x direction, y direction, and z direction, when there is stress along x direction, y direction, z direction, then dilatation would be expressed by this mathematical model, where mu is the Poisson's ratio of the material, E is the Young's modulus of the material, and sigma x, sigma y, and sigma z are the stresses along x, y, and z direction. And these are because of the loads which we have applied, the external loads which we have applied on the material. Now, from where we got this equation, so for that again we are assuming a material in the shape of a unit cube. Each side is 1, and we have subjected the material to general loading. We have loading along x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis. So because you could see that the loading is tensile loading. The loading on this unit cube is tensile loading. Sigma x is tensile stress, sigma y is tensile stress, and sigma z is tensile stress. So because of this tensile stress, what would happen along x direction? The material would elongate. And the change in length, let's say the change in length or elongation is delta x. So the new side length along x-axis would be 1 plus delta x. This is the new side length along x-axis. Similarly, the stress along y-axis again tensile stress. So we would have elongation along y-axis. So the new side length along y-axis would be 1 plus delta y. And also the loading along z-axis or the stress along z-axis is tensile stress. So therefore, again we would have elongation. So the new side length along z-axis would be 1 plus delta z. Strain epsilon x is delta x by Lx. Change in dimension per unit original dimension. The change in dimension, let's say, is delta x. and the original dimension along x-axis is 1. It is 1. So delta x by 1. So for this unit cube, epsilon x is actually equal to delta x. Similarly, epsilon y is delta y, that is the change in dimension along y-axis divided by the original dimension along y-axis, Ly is equal to delta y, and the original dimension along y-axis is 1, so epsilon y is delta y. Similarly, epsilon z is delta z by Lz is equal to delta z by 1. 1 is the original side length along z-axis, so it is equal to delta z. So we could write down as 1 plus delta x in this case is equal to 1 plus epsilon x, because epsilon x is delta x. 1 plus delta y is equal to 1 plus epsilon y, because delta y is epsilon y, and 1 plus delta z is equal to 1 plus epsilon z, because delta z is epsilon z in this case. Now the change in volume because of this application of loading. So the new volume because of the application of load minus the original volume. This is a unit cube, and the volume of unit cube, we have to multiply all these three sides. So 1 multiplied by 1 multiplied by 1. So 1 into 1 into 1 is 1. So the volume of this unit cube is 1. Original volume is 1. The new volume is the new side length. The new side length along x-axis is 1 plus epsilon x. The new side length along y-axis is 1 plus epsilon y, and the new side length along z-axis is 1 plus epsilon z. So you have to multiply these side lengths, the new side length. So epsilon 1 plus epsilon x into 1 plus epsilon y into 1 plus epsilon z gives you the volume after the material is subjected to the general loading. So new volume minus original volume. Now you have to multiply all these three, and after multiplication we would get 1 plus epsilon x plus epsilon y plus epsilon z, and then we would get the multiple of epsilon x, epsilon y, epsilon x, epsilon z, epsilon x, epsilon y, epsilon z. Since we are actually dealing with strain, and strain is a minute quantity, it would be in points. So the multiple of two small quantities would be more small. Similarly, the multiple of three small quantities would further reduce. So here what we are doing, we are using the approximation, and the approximation is that we are ignoring the higher order terms. So we are ignoring the multiple of two smaller quantities and the multiples of three smaller quantities. So after ignoring that, after doing that approximation is valid, because we know that the strain is a very small quantity, and the multiple of two small quantities would be further reduced, and the multiple of three small quantities would further reduce. So the assumption is valid, the approximation is valid. So after doing that approximation, what would be our multiplication of all these three quantities? It would be 1 plus epsilon x plus epsilon y plus epsilon z. You could do this multiplication, you would get higher order terms. You could ignore those higher order terms, and then at the end finally you would get this quantity. So removing this square bracket, here you could see that we have -1, so this one and this one would cancel with each other. So the change in volume, we would get epsilon x plus epsilon y plus epsilon z. We have already found out in case of general loading, we have already found out these analytical models for epsilon x, epsilon y, and epsilon z. So plugging these here in this equation, delta V, change in volume, putting for epsilon x, this, putting for epsilon y from this equation, and putting for epsilon z from this equation. After putting these three and then simplifying the equation, here you could see that normally you could see epsilon x, sigma x here, sigma x. So we could take this common. Similarly, E is common. So meaning that we could take sigma x by E common. So from here, when you take common, so you will get 1 from here, and these two would add, so it would become 2 with negative sign. So 1 from here, so 1 minus, when these two will add, so minus 2 mu and by E. And inside we would have sigma x. Similarly, we could, if you look at here, so we could take sigma y by E common. So what would be here? We would have 1 minus 2 mu by E. So after plugging and then after simplification, what we would get delta V is equal to 1 minus 2 mu by E times sigma x plus sigma y plus sigma z. This is the change in volume. Change in volume. Dilatation, change in volume per unit volume. The original volume of this cube, its unit cube is 1. So if you divide this change in volume by 1, we would get the same quantity. So change in volume per unit volume, dilatation. So this is also the equation for the dilatation. Dilatation, change in volume per unit volume. So we got this equation for the dilatation. In terms of Poisson's ratio, Young's modulus, and the stresses which are applied on the material. Bulk modulus, this is the mathematical equation for the bulk modulus. K, bulk modulus is represented by the letter small k. It is equal to E by 3 times 1 minus mu. We call this mathematical equation as bulk modulus because in the equation you see the Young's modulus and Poisson's ratios, which are the mechanical properties of the material. Let's discuss how we got this mathematical model for the bulk modulus. We discussed that dilatation is the change in volume per unit volume, and it is equal to 1 minus 2 mu by E sigma x plus sigma y plus sigma z. Now assume that we are subjecting the material to uniform hydrostatic pressure, or an element subjected to uniform hydrostatic pressure. Uniform hydrostatic pressure means that we are subjecting the material to compressive loading in all directions. Px, Py, and Pz is compressive minus P. So we are compressing the material in all these three directions, in all these three directions. A uniform means the loading in all these three directions is same. Hydrostatic pressure means it is compressive. It is compressive. So Px, Py, Pz is equal to minus P. Minus means compressive, P, it is same in all directions. So in this case, sigma x, sigma y, sigma z would be equal to minus P by A, and it is a unit cube. So the area over which this load is applying, it is 1. 1 by 1 is 1. So minus P by A is minus P. So sigma x, sigma y, sigma z is equal to minus P. So in this equation, sigma x, putting for sigma x, sigma y, sigma z, minus P, minus P, minus. So these three would add and we would get minus 3P, minus 3P. So we are writing that minus 3P here. So minus and 3P minus 3p times 1 minus 2 nu by e. Now, in this equation, this quantity appears, which is 1, 3, 1 minus 2 nu by e. And we call this quantity the reciprocal of this quantity as bulk modulus. For the sake of simplicity, we call this quantity, the reciprocal of this quantity as bulk modulus. So K is equal to E by 3 times 1 minus 2 mu. That is bulk modulus. So putting for that, so E is equal to minus P by 2. Why it is called bulk modulus? Because if you look at this equation, E is analogous to E is the change in volume per unit volume. It is analogous to strain, and P is analogous to stress. P is analogous to stress. So if you look at this equation, these two are analogous to strain and stress. So this quantity is somewhat analogous to Young's modulus. So, but here we have applied this, subjected this to a uniform hydrostatic pressure. So we call it a bulk modulus, K. Now, very useful information or conclusion that we got, get from this discussion. Subjected to uniform pressure, meaning that uniform hydrostatic pressure, this condition, dilatation must be negative. When we subject the material to uniform hydrostatic pressure, we got here that the dilatation must be negative. We got that dilatation must be negative. And when dilatation is negative, meaning that it cannot be positive. Also, we could visualize that what would happen to the material if it is subjected to compressive load in all three directions. It would reduce in all three dimensions. Its volume would reduce in all three dimensions. Its volume would reduce in all three dimensions. Dilatation would be negative. The change in volume per unit volume must be negative. It cannot be positive in this case. It can never be positive. If somebody says that it is positive, it is completely nonsense. You could see that the material would squeeze. So dilatation, that is the change in volume, would be negative, always negative. So this is the reality that in this case, the dilatation would be negative, E would be always negative. If E is always negative, the meaning that this quantity, 3 times 1 minus 2 mu by E, it must be always positive. Otherwise, if it becomes negative, then dilatation becomes positive, which is not feasible in this case, which is not real. Which means that this quantity would be always positive. So, and this quantity would be positive if this mu is between this range. So this defines the range for mu. The mu must be in this range. 0 is less than mu and mu is less than 1 by 2, meaning that mu would be always between 0 and 0.5. It would be less than 0.5. If you consider that it is 1 by 2, so let's say mu is 1 by 2. So 1 by 2, this 2 would cancel with this 2. We would have 1. So 1 minus 1 is 0. And 1 minus 1 is 0. So 3 minus 0 is 0. And 0 by 0 into P is 0. And 0 by E is 0. Dilatation or the change in volume is 0. It is not feasible. not feasible because we could visualize that when we subject a material to the compressive loading and the loading actually squeeze the material, then there would be change in volume. So what that means, it means that the mu cannot be equal to 1 by 2. It must always be less than, it must always be less than 1 by 2. Otherwise, we are deviating from the reality. We are violating the laws of physics. Laws of physics is that when you apply a compressive load on the material in direction, it must squeeze. It must squeeze. Its volume would decrease. Similarly, if mu is 0, what does that mean? If mu is 0, it means that there is no strain. Huh? So we are also not considering that, we are considering that we are applying the load of stress. There is deformation in the material, strain is happening. So it means that mu would be always between 0 and 0.5. A very, very important conclusion from this topic. So all of the materials, isotropic materials, mu would be always between 0 and 0.5. Next, we would discuss a very interesting example based on the discussion which we have done. We have a plate which is subjected to stress in x direction, stress in z direction. You could see the coordinate plane, the dimensions of the plate is given, and on the plate a circle is subscribed. This length is AB and this diameter is BC. Let's read the statement. A circle of diameter D is equal to 9 inches is inscribed on an unstressed aluminium plate of thickness is equal to 3 by 4 inch. Forces acting in the plane of the plate later cause normal stress sigma x is equal to 12 KSI, that is kilo pound per square inch, and sigma z is equal to 20 KSI, 20 kilo pound per square inch. Young's modulus is 10 into 10 raised to power 6 psi, and mu is, that is Poisson's ratio, is 1 by 3. Determine the change in the length of diameter AB. What is the change in length of this diameter because of this loading? The length of diameter CD, that is delta CD. The thickness of the plate, the change in the thickness of the plate, delta T, and the change in the volume of the plate. So we have to find all these things. So here you see that we have a material and it is subjected to a loading along x direction and we are loading along z direction. And there is no loading along y direction. So there would be no stress along y direction. However, there would be strain in all these three directions. We would have strain along x direction, strain along y direction, strain along z direction. The strain along x direction, would be epsilon x is equal to change in length AB, that is delta BA or AB, divided by the diameter of this circle, that is length AB. And from there we could find out the change in length AB, that is delta BA, is equal to epsilon x times d, where d is the diameter of the circle which is described on the plate. Epsilon z, to change the strain along z direction. If you see that this diameter is along z direction, so delta CD divided by the original diameter of the circle D. So from there delta CD is equal to epsilon z d. epsilon y, that is the strain along the thickness along x direction. Epsilon y is epsilon t, and it is equal to the change along thickness, that is delta t divided by the original dimension. The original dimension is the thickness t. So epsilon y is equal to epsilon t is equal to delta t by 2, and from there delta t is equal to epsilon y t. The diameter of the circle is given, the thickness of the material is given, meaning that in order to find out these deformations, the change in length AB, the change in length CD, and the change along the thickness, we have to find out epsilon x, epsilon z, and epsilon y. Similarly, in order to find the change in volume, change in volume is equal to dilatation times original volume. So meaning that we have to find out the original volume, the dimensions are given, side lengths are given, thicknesses are given, so meaning that we could easily calculate the original volume. And dilatation as we discussed is epsilon x, epsilon y, and epsilon z. So once these epsilons are known, so we could find out the change in volume, and we could find out these deformations. So in order to find out these strains along x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis, we have to use the generalized Hooke's law. We have already developed those analytical models. So epsilon x would be equal to plus sigma x by E minus mu sigma y by E minus mu sigma z by E. E is given, sigma x is given, sigma z is given, sigma y is 0. Sigma y is simply 0. After putting all these equations and then after computation, epsilon x is plus 0.533 into 10 to the power minus 3 inch by inch. Epsilon y, we have the analytical model after plugging for mu sigma x, sigma y, and sigma z, e, sigma y is 0. After plugging, epsilon y is minus 1.067 into 10 to the power minus 3 inch by inch. And lastly, epsilon z, we have the analytical model. After putting all the values, epsilon z is equal to plus 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 3 inch by inch. So we have calculated the strain in all these three directions. So next, we have to just plug the values. So delta VA is equal to epsilon x. We have already calculated. The diameter of the circle is given just by putting the values and calculation. Delta VA, that is the change along line AB, it is equal to plus 4.8 into 10 raised to the power minus 3 inches. Plus sign means there would be elongation along x direction or along line AB. Delta CD is equal to epsilon VB. After plugging the values, delta CD is plus 14.4 into 10 raised to the power minus 3 inches. Again, there is elongation along z direction. Delta T is equal to epsilon YT. Putting for epsilon y and the thickness delta T, the change along thickness is equal to minus 0.8 into 10 raised to the power minus 3. The negative sign shows shortening. There is decrease in the thickness of the material. Now calculating the dilatation, so we have to add epsilon x, epsilon y, and epsilon z. So after adding this, we get the dilatation as 1.067 into 10 to the power minus 3 inch cube by inch cube. And the change in volume, delta V is equal to E V, and you have to put the dilatation and the volume 15 into 15 into the thickness. After calculation, the change in volume is equal to plus 0.187 inch cube. Plus means increase in volume. In this case, the volume, when we subject the material to the loading sigma x and sigma y, both are tensile. So the overall volume change will be positive. Increase, we have to see increase in the volume of the material. With this, I'm finishing the lecture. I hope everything would be clear to you. Thank you.